Ugh, another penny pincher, Emily muttered under her breath as she picked up the receipt from table 5. She had been working at Harper's Diner for 3 years now, and if there was one thing she couldn't stand, it was customers who barely tipped. The man at table 5, dressed in faded jeans and a plain gray hoodie, had left just a couple of coins, barely enough to buy a piece of gum. Emily grabbed the coins and rolled her eyes dramatically as she walked back toward the counter. What was the point of working hard if people wouldn't appreciate the service? She turned back, her arms crossed, as the man slowly stood up, gathering his things. He wasn't old, maybe in his early 40s, with short, slightly graying hair. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't quite place it. Some people just don't get how tipping works, Emily grumbled to her co-worker Sarah, who was refilling the coffee machine. Sarah chuckled. Yeah, but at least he wasn't rude, Emily scoffed. Rude or not, he's just as bad. Leaving spare change like this? It's insulting. What she didn't realize was that the man hadn't left the diner just yet. He had paused by the door and overheard everything. He turned his head slightly, watching her reaction, his face unreadable. Then, without a word, he walked out. Emily shrugged and continued with her shift, thinking she'd never see him again. She had no idea that by the next day, her whole world would turn upside down. The next morning, the diner buzzed with rumors. Emily noticed the excited chatter among her co-workers, but didn't pay much attention until Sarah leaned over and whispered, "Did you hear? We're getting a new owner." Emily frowned, wiping her hands on her apron. What? Since when? Apparently, the old owner sold the place last week. The new guy is coming in today to check on everything. Emily sighed. She had been meaning to ask for a raise, but if ownership had changed, that request would have to wait. She could only hope that whoever was taking over wasn't some corporate type who wanted to change everything. Then the front door opened, and the chatter died down. A man in a tailored navy blue suit walked in, exuding quiet authority. He had short, neatly styled hair with streaks of gray, and a calm but firm demeanor. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. It was him. The man she had called a penny pincher. The man she had mocked just yesterday. Her stomach sank as he scanned the room, his gaze settling on her. He smirked slightly, then turned to address the entire staff. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Daniel Carter, your new boss." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had rolled her eyes at the man who now owned the entire diner. Emily's heart pounded as Daniel Carter's sharp gaze flicked across the room. He exuded quiet confidence, his suit crisp, his presence commanding. The diner was silent, everyone waiting to hear what the new owner had to say. Daniel cleared his throat and smiled slightly. "I've been coming here for years, and I have a lot of respect for hardworking people." He paused, his eyes locking onto Emily for a split second before continuing. "But I also believe in good service, mutual respect, and most importantly, treating customers well." Emily swallowed hard. Sarah nudged her subtly, whispering, "Why's he looking at you like that?" Emily didn't answer. She could still hear her own dismissive tone from yesterday. "If you're too cheap to leave a tip, just say that." The memory burned in her mind. Daniel clapped his hands together. "All right. I'll be spending the next few weeks observing how things run. I want to see how this place operates before making any changes. So, let's keep things business as usual." A collective sigh of relief rippled through the staff. Business as usual sounded good. Then Daniel turned directly to Emily. "Emily, can I see you in my office?" The relief vanished. Her stomach twisted into knots. Her co-workers gave her sympathetic glances as she nodded and followed him toward the back office. Emily's legs felt like lead as she followed Daniel into the small office at the back of the diner. The space was cluttered with stacks of paperwork, a dusty old fan whirring in the corner. She had never stepped foot inside before. Daniel shut the door behind her and took a seat behind the desk. He gestured toward the chair opposite him. "Sit." She obeyed, her hands twisting in her lap. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Do you remember me?" Emily's face burned. I do now." He leaned back in his chair, a ghost of a smirk playing on his lips. "I figured. I doubt you've rolled your eyes at too many customers in the last 24 hours. She flinched. He raised a hand, stopping her. "Look, I'm not here to humiliate you. I just want to know. Why?" Her mouth opened and closed. She knew there was no excuse. Finally, she let out a breath. "It was a long shift. I was tired. You didn't leave a tip, and Daniel's expression didn't change. "So, you judged me?" Emily felt even smaller. "Yes," she admitted quietly. He nodded as if that was the answer he expected. "You know, I used to work in restaurants too. I've been in your shoes. I know how hard it is." Emily's head shot up in surprise. "You did?" Daniel's smile was faint. "I did. Which is why I respect people who work in this industry. But I also believe that kindness costs nothing." His voice hardened just slightly. "That includes how you treat customers." Emily swallowed past the lump in her throat. "I'm sorry," she said sincerely. "I really am." Daniel nodded. "Good. Because I don't fire people over one mistake. But I do expect change." Her breath hitched. "So, I still have my job?" "For now," he said, watching her carefully. "But consider this your warning." She nodded quickly. "I understand. I won't mess up again." Daniel studied her for a moment longer before standing. "All right, let's get back to work." Emily practically jumped out of the chair, relieved beyond words. But as she followed him back into the restaurant, she knew one thing for sure. She would never make that mistake again. Emily stepped out of the office, her heart still hammering in her chest. The conversation with Daniel had shaken her to the core. She had walked in expecting to be fired, humiliated even. But instead, she had been given something she didn't expect. A second chance. Daniel returned to his seat at the counter, his presence now impossible to ignore. He wasn't just some customer anymore. He was her boss. She took a deep breath and forced herself to focus. The lunch rush was about to hit, and she needed to get her head in the game. No more mistakes, no more assumptions. As the doors swung open and customers trickled in, she plastered on a smile, determined to prove she could be better. Emily was different now. She was more careful, more attentive. When an elderly woman struggled with her menu, Emily crouched down to help her read the small print. When a family with noisy kids entered, she handled them with patience instead of frustration. Daniel smirked. Good. She was learning. A man walked into the diner and slid onto the stool next to him. Daniel glanced over and nodded. "You're late," his assistant Jared chuckled. "Traffic was awful. What did I miss?" Daniel tilted his head toward Emily. "She's doing better." Jared followed his gaze. "So, you're really not going to fire her?" Daniel took a sip of his coffee, his smirk deepening. "Nope. I like watching people grow." Jared chuckled. "You're either a saint or a madman." Daniel shrugged. Maybe both. The truth was, Emily reminded him of himself when he was younger. Hot-headed, quick to judge, and still learning the value of humility. He had been lucky to have a mentor who believed in him, and now maybe it was his turn to pass that lesson along. That evening, as Emily finished wiping down the last table, she hesitated before heading out. Daniel was still at the counter, flipping through a file on his tablet. She swallowed her nerves and approached. "Hey," she said hesitantly. Daniel looked up, raising a brow. She shifted awkwardly. I wanted to say thank you for giving me a second chance." Daniel's lips twitched. Everyone deserves one, Emily nodded. I won't waste it. I know you won't. For the first time since they met, Emily saw it. The quiet kindness behind his sharp gaze. He might have been a billionaire, but tonight, he just looked like a man who believed in people. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't so different from him after all.